any podcaster, if you ask them what their dream would be, I think that they would tell you that their dream would be to interview their best friend. So I have that dream come true for me today. So I have my buddy Daniel. Daniel, how are you, buddy?
I'm fantastic. This is a dream come true for me as well.
I have to be more deliberate with who I surround myself with, because I just offered Daniel to meet pretty much a stranger, and you said, no, I'm busy. Like, unless there's a point, why am I meeting this person?
You have to protect your calendar.
Yes.
Right? You really have to protect your calendar.
People have told me that I have a great podcast voice. I don't know what that means.
You have a great voice.
I think that they're trying to tell me I'm not so good looking. Because I think when somebody compliments you on the quality of your voice, they're like saying, stick with audio only.
Dude, you have a face for radio.
Thanks, buddy.
For sure.
Thanks, buddy. Welcome to Rise Podcast, Life Stories of Accomplished Individuals. Today is a very special day for me, and I know I often say that today is a special day for me, but today is a more special day than the other special days, because I think that, if any podcaster, if you ask them what their dream would be, and I think that they would tell you that their dream would be to interview their best friend. So I have that dream come true for me today. So I have my buddy Daniel. Daniel, how are you, buddy?
I'm fantastic. This is a dream come true for me as well.
How many years in the making is this? Oh, move that mic closer to you. Was it your first podcast?
This is my first podcast. Well,
How many years? How many years in the making?
I think well over 3 decades.
Yeah. So we've known each other for 30 years, and we met back in college. But before we get into that story, I want to explain to people who you are, because I don't want them to drop off. I want them to understand that I'm not just interviewing my friends for fun. I want them to understand the reason I'm interviewing you. So I've prepared this little bio for you, which I wrote, and I hope you like it.
Let's hear it.
Okay. Now, I want everyone to keep in mind when I read Daniel's bio, his tale of the tape, is that I was around for all of this stuff. So I witnessed all of this stuff. So I'm very close to Daniel's story. So Daniel Frankel is a titan in the hospitality industry. As the founder and CEO of Tap and Barrel Restaurants, he's transformed Vancouver's culinary scene with a company culture rooted in sustainability. His establishments have clinched the Green Table Award, standing out as environmentally conscious institutions in the city. Since the inception of Tap and Barrel in 2012, Daniel has expanded to 8 large format restaurants and a brewery hall, all while managing a sizable team of over 1,300 people. Each location boasts seating capacities ranging from 500 to an impressive 850 seats. Daniel's recognition as an industry leader is well deserved. He's a BC Restaurant Hall of Fame inductee and has secured a spot in the BIV BC 500. BIV, did I get that right?
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
List, 2 years running. His accomplishments have also led to accolades from Ernst & Young's Entrepreneur of the Year Awards for Western Canada. Education and continuous learning remain a priority for Daniel. He recently completed a 10-year program at Harvard Business School. Currently, he serves as the co-chair of the YPO. YPO is Young Presidents Organization, for those who don't know, of the YPO BC chapter for the year 2023 and 24. Beyond his restaurant empire, he's dabbled in media and remains passionate about philanthropy, arts, and culture. When people call something an empire, they often exaggerate. Somebody with, who's a partner who owns 50% in a restaurant, they'll say that he's got a restaurant empire. You actually have a restaurant empire. It's not like, you own a piece of a restaurant or you own kind of like a snack bar, which you have owned snack bars in the past. But
I have indeed.
But you actually have a restaurant empire. And just, to give more context, Daniel, every time Vancouver comes up and I talk to people, they're going to Vancouver, or anybody who's in kind of your part of the world at any time, I say, I've got a friend out there. And I'm always so proud of you. And they say, oh yeah, who's your friend? And I say, have you ever heard of Tap and Barrel? And they go, yeah. I go, yeah, he's my buddy. I'm like, oh, which location is his? Because they don't know that you're all corporately owned. I said, all of them. And they're really blown away. So, the reputation that your organization and you personally have in Vancouver is second to none. Like, you've got the keys to the city.
I'd love to have the keys to the city.
You're so modest. You're the most modest guy I've known. You're sitting there blushing when I'm saying all these good things about you.
I am. I'm like, who is this guy?
Yeah.
Wow.
No, but
I want to meet him.
Look, when you hear this, like what I've prepared, And when I read it, do you sometimes kind of pinch yourself? And because I know I'm so close to you, and I know your story, and I know where you started and how you started, and like I remember meeting you, and you know you're a little younger than me, so I was kind of like, you know, you're a bit of a punk kid, and you and I were hanging out, but like from where you've come to where you are, I mean it's huge. So do you ever pinch yourself and be like, how the hell do I own 8 restaurants totaling something like 5,000 or 6,000 seats?
I always think how lucky I am, and I'm so grateful for the opportunities that I've had to meet such great people that have helped me to build this organization. So yeah, no, I often stop and think, wow, you know, I am living a life worth living for myself, and I'm watching the people around me live a life worth living for themselves as well, and that is exciting for me.
You know, before we kind of jump into your story, I want to give some more context about how you and I know each other. So I remember I went to Western, University of Western Ontario, and you went to Western. So you actually traveled across country to go to university. And we had a mutual friend, Mayor Glusberg. And Mayor had told me one day, he goes, oh, you got to meet this guy, Daniel. He's a great guy. You guys will really get along. And so he didn't even go to the school. He was just like, he was in Toronto and he would stop in.
Yeah, I remember meeting him on the stairs. My mom dropped me off. We pulled up in front of Delaware, and he hears us speaking Hebrew.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh my goodness, an Israeli, come here. You got to meet my friend Gary.
Which is funny because I'm not Israeli, but he right away said that you and I have to meet, and I'm glad he made that introduction. That was really serendipitous, because you must have been at that time. You're about a year younger than me. You were 19 and I was 20.
Yeah.
And now I'm 50 and you're 49.
You got it.
Where did the time go?
Where did the time go?
You're my best friend. You really are. You're the closest person to me, and I don't want to get emotional, but let's not do that. Daniel, let's jump into it. A lot of the answers to the questions I already know, but let's start off with kind of your early life. I want to understand the circumstances and kind of the path that led you, to where you are. I've been around for a lot of the ups and downs. I've been around when you've been stressed. I remember around COVID, you were really stressed, and I had to have a serious talk with you when you were stressed.
Yeah.
And in that talk, and if it's too personal, like we'll cut it out. But I remember in that talk, when you were stressed about COVID, because for any restaurateur, especially at your scale, COVID was a nightmare.
Yeah.
I remember the talk I had with you. I had to remind you who you are.
You did. Yeah, I remember that.
I reminded you who you are. So let's go back. Let's go back and tell me, first of all, where were you born?
Born in Haifa, and we lived in Tel Aviv, Israel.
And how old were you when you came to Canada?
6.
You were
Moved here at
6.
6.
So you've grown up in Canada. Your memories are probably started in Canada.
Yeah. I'm a Vancouverite.
Right. And you've always been in Vancouver.
Yeah. I've always been in Vancouver, aside from Western when we went to university.
Right.
1 year in LA after university, but other than that, I've always lived in Vancouver.
And growing up, were your parents entrepreneurs?
My parents, my dad was an entrepreneur and a restaurateur. He's a New York boy. He moved to Israel. He worked for the government. He loved food, and he ended up opening a couple different QSR, quick service restaurants, in Tel Aviv. It was a struggle in Israel at the time, maybe today as well.
Sure.
And my uncle was living in Vancouver, and he and some partners were opening up a restaurant in Vancouver. And he called my dad and said, why don't you come and join our partnership and be the manager? And that's what brought us to Vancouver.
That's what brought, what brought you to Vancouver was a business opportunity for your dad to be a part of a restaurant.
Yeah.
And obviously, and so it was, you're the middle child. So it was your older sister, you.
Yeah, just that's it.
Alex wasn't
born
around.
yet.
She wasn't around yet.
Yeah.
Right.
So Dana was 8, I was 6, and Alex was only born in 81.
Okay. So then, your family came for the restaurant opportunity.
Correct.
What was that restaurant? I know what the restaurant was, but I want you to tell me.
Well, it's and this is quite full circle. The restaurant was Bridges Restaurant.
And why is it full circle?
Well, because in 2018 I managed to buy the business from the previous partnership. I negotiated with my uncle, who was the primary partner there, and we actually did a massive reno and turned it into Tap and Barrel Bridges, keeping the legacy name Bridges.
And it's now Tap and Barrel.
And it's now Tap and Barrel Bridges, and that's the restaurant that's 850 seats. We
So-
expanded it a little bit.
So I remember the times that I would come to Vancouver, and you would take me around to the various properties that you own, and I remember that Bridges was your family's, and it was always kind of separate from what you guys had, from what your family had. Bridges, and just for people who don't know Vancouver, Bridges is on Granville Island, which is
Correct.
an island located in the center of the city,
Yeah,
and it's a landmark. Like everybody in Vancouver knows Bridges.
correct. Yeah.
So you grew up in that environment. What was your mom doing at the time?
She was part of the partnership as well,
Okay.
but mostly a stay-at-home mom.
And so
Yeah.
your dad was working in the business. What role did he have in the business at the time?
Well, he only worked there for 2 years,
Okay.
and then the partnership unraveled, we'll say.
Okay.
But he was the GM for the first 2 years, and then
Okay.
he stepped away from that.
Okay. And then you guys had other place. You had the what was the place in the park?
So
called
my
again?
dad stepped away from that, and opened up another place called Prospect Point Cafe, which was
Yes.
a takeout concession and a gift shop.
Right. So I mean, I want to make it clear that the business and kind of what your dad had started, with Bridges and then with Prospect Point. I remember, when we were teenagers and I was already 20, and I remember in my 20s when I would go and visit you in Vancouver, and I would think like this is it's an impressive operation, like there's a lot going on, and I remember you taking me and showing me around. But just I want people to understand how you single-handedly took that knowledge that you had growing up in that environment with your family in the restaurant business, in Vancouver in the 90s, 80s, 90s, and really what you've turned it into today, because it's night and day. Like the scale you've achieved isn't. It's not as if somebody handed you the keys to 8 restaurants and say, good job, Daniel. That wasn't the case. Like I've seen you build this thing.
Yeah, no, there was. So I never worked at Bridges. I had no involvement in Bridges, and there were a lot of partners there, and my dad was not involved in operations after the first 2 years. There was let's call it an unraveling of
I get it.
of the partnership.
No, it happens.
And then so my dad was operating Prospect Point. My uncle and his partners were operating Bridges. I never wanted to be in the hospitality business. First of all, I saw the unraveling of the partnership, and that was not something that I ever wanted to be a part of.
No, sorry. I was going to say, like, when you're kind of getting into your different thoughts around what entrepreneurial ventures you would get into.
Yeah.
But how did you know that? What was it about being an entrepreneur that drew you to that? Because I've never heard you talk about, since we were much younger, of working for someone. So that was never on the table for you. How did you know you wanted to be an entrepreneur?
Oh, well, I've just always had, this bout of creativity and have wanted to go and try different things. So even when my dad opened up Prospect Point, I put a proposal together to his general manager. I was in grade 9. I wanted to operate an ice cream cart pretty much in front of it, and buy the product from them, built the cart, operate it, and pay them a percentage rent. I mean, it was an incredible summer. I worked my ass off all summer, and it was a proof of concept that people would actually buy ice cream. So that was my first real business. But even before that, I would sell artwork when I was a kid.
Your own artwork?
My own art. Yeah.
Your own art.
Yeah. Well,
I know.
Deeply invested in art, both as a collector today, but also as a painter and a sculptor.
You're also a musician. You were at my house a couple of nights ago playing guitar for my kids.
That's right. We had a great time here on Shabbat.
So, did you feel a pressure to be an entrepreneur? Did you feel because you grew up in an entrepreneurial family?
No, not at all. I never felt the pressure. I just always gravitated towards expressing my creativity and doing what I love, and trying to figure out how to monetize that as well, so I can actually, have a livelihood from that. And that's why I got into film, which I failed at. It wasn't a successful career that I had in film, but I attempted it for about 4 years. I loved telling stories. I loved putting together narratives. And the fact of the matter is I just couldn't figure out how to monetize off that. And that's why I then transitioned.
Right. But when you say you failed in film, I don't think, and correct me if I'm wrong, I don't believe you actually made enough content. Like you didn't actually create enough films, either whether it's short form or long form or features, to say that you failed. I think what you're referring to is the D-Cinema venture that you had. So that's not a fail in being a filmmaker. That may have been a fail in that particular business model where you were trying to like democratize the whole like, you know, the film industry, but that's not a fail. That's not a fail on the creative side of it.
No, I totally agree, and I don't look at failures as a bad thing or failure as a bad word. I mean, you know, my failures are the tuition fee that I pay for my education, and that's what those are the building blocks of why I'm here. So I didn't mean to imply that that was a negative failure. That was actually a positive failure because it actually pushed me to a fork in a road.
Yeah.
And then I had to make a decision, and for me, I just couldn't figure out how to make it work. And D-Cinema was a little too early as well.
Right.
I mean, as far as democratizing content online, it was, I mean, that was over 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Today that would probably work.
That would probably work. Do you still have the domain?
What's that?
Do you still have the domain?
No, I don't.
That was a good domain.
Damn, right?
That's a good one. That's a good one.
No, a friend of mine forgot to re-register. And
it happens, unfortunately. So, okay, so you went off to university, but listen, before we get into university, you know, doing all of these kind of entrepreneurial activities, like you said, when you were in the 9th grade and you set up this ice cream cart, you kind of already had this in mind to become an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Were your parents supportive of this, or were they saying, you know, Daniel, it would be best if you like, you know, concentrate on getting an education in order to become a good employee? Was there any talk of that?
Yeah, my parents have always been incredibly supportive of everything that I've wanted to try or do or attempt, and very patient with me. Both my mom and dad have really been, you know, the wind beneath my wings. They've always applauded and assisted and encouraged, and you know, there was a time where there was some frustration because, you know, I wasn't independent and I was, you know, relying on help without a doubt, but luckily that didn't last too long.
Yeah. Okay, so tell me about some of the. Well, hold on a second. I want to talk about college for a second. I want to talk about university. You went to school for film.
Yeah.
I remember.
Yeah.
You were studying film, and I was studying geology. We were quite the duo back in university.
I know, you were getting your rocks off. And
right. Yes.
I was. You know, I don't know what I was doing, making.
But we had fun. You know,
films.
I feel like we had fun. So. You know, and when it comes to education, when you look back at your university, you know, your degree, the time you spent in school, do you feel that, like, how do you feel that plays? How much of a role does that play in a person's success, like their kind of formal education?
Well, no, I think formal education has and continues to play a huge role in my life. I mean, it doesn't matter what you're studying. What matters is learning how to study and how to continue to stay engaged, and how to look at things differently and how to maintain that interest level. You know, you have to turn over every stone. So for me in university, there were a ton of topics that, you know, I took and didn't realize that I would gravitate towards. But as soon as you turn over the stone, you know, this one's for me, this one's not for me. And after you turn over the stones, at some point in your life, you start connecting those dots, and it takes you down a path. It's a meandering path.
Yeah.
You know, there's no straight line. But I think that's the importance of education. And for me, that's why I've upheld that belief and continued with my education right up until this year.
Right up until recently. So I remember for the last 10 years you've been doing, I mean, part-time you've been doing this course at Harvard.
Yeah.
Where you would actually, I think a lot of it you were doing remotely, but then you would fly to Harvard every now and then.
Yeah, every January I'd go to Harvard, I'd stay with my cousin in Cambridge for a few days and really connect with Jonathan, who I love. And then I would go into this program at HBS on campus and be there with my peers. And it taught me so much. And again, just like university, when we went together, I met incredible people who just opened up my horizons. You know, I turned over so many stones there.
I think you just, you know, I want to dig into that a little bit. You know, you just brought something up that I think is really important. And, you know, people often ask the benefit of formal education, of college, university. And the stuff you learn is one thing. I think to your point, yeah, it's really important to learn how to learn how to be engaged, to be organized, you know, to be able to commit to showing up somewhere, you know, retaining information and regurgitating it, which is probably my least favorite thing about school. But I think to your point, and you and I are a good example, is that these institutions is a place where you meet friends that last a lifetime. Yeah. And I think that's a really important part of the, you know, of that journey, because to your point, like, I'm sure you've made a lot of good friends and contacts at Harvard. Well, you met me at Western.
Well, there's a few things. You know, one, it teaches you critical thinking, which in this day and age is very important. Yeah. Everybody, that's the most important thing, is critical thinking. And the other part is, you're right, your social climate is very important. And I met you, and I'm so incredibly blessed to have you. And you've recently met Akash, who I met at HBS, you know, and he's like the Gary of HBS for me, who's become a very, very close friend. And now you two know each other, you know, and that those dots are starting to get connected. Yeah. And that's a beautiful thing. So
yeah, I think to your point, when it comes to education, it's those connections that we make. There's those lifelong connections. But it's interesting because, especially when you're young, and I think a lot of younger kids, like people who are listening to this, let's say who have college-aged kids, or themselves are college. I don't know if I have people listening who are that young. I think what's really important in university is socializing. In general, like, you know, I have kids, and I know that when they go to university, I'm really going to be focused on the socialization, and I think that's really important. And I think that we've all come a long way because of it. Daniel, let's get into how you got into the restaurant business. How did you decide? So I remember with D Cinema, things didn't work out. So how did you know to make the call to, that's it, it's over, like, I have to stop and I have to now start something else?
So, you know, it wasn't obvious, but for me, it was sort of in parallel with my entertainment aspirations. I was working on D Cinema. I had another project called Pitch Off. I was working with a wonderful friend of mine to this day, a guy named Larry Sugar, who was a very, very prolific producer, probably the most prolific producer in the country. And at the same time, my stepmom showed me a clipping from a newspaper that was an RFP. It was a request for proposals for a little coffee shop that the city of Vancouver put up for a public RFP. Yeah. And she said, "Hey, look at this." And I looked at that and I kept the clipping. And after a few days, I started thinking, why am I keeping this clipping? Maybe I should start a cash flow business, because I'm in this business that, you know, I'm just not really figuring out, and it requires investment. And I'm not really seeing, you know, the light at the end of the tunnel. Right. So I ended up contacting the city and telling them that I'm putting my name in the hat for this little coffee shop. We're talking about a 100-square-foot cafe in the lobby of a community center.
So you got this coffee shop. Where was the coffee shop, Daniel?
Coffee shop was at the Cole Harbour Community Center, 480 Broughton Street in Cole Harbour.
That turned into a much bigger project later on. Was that Cole Harbour Cafe? Did that turn into?
No, that was the Cole Harbour Cafe.
Okay.
And I never actually made any money at the Cole Harbour Cafe. Our first year revenues were $100,000 gross, and my net was about minus 40.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I mean, this was my entry into the hospitality world. I thought, wow, I'm in a cash flow business. This is amazing. I'm just seeing the cash flow coming in. But as soon as I sat down with an accountant to do the numbers, and you got to remember, I did my books day to day. Yeah. That was just at the end of the year. I realized, oh crap, I'm actually losing money. Now, the city felt so, I built a relationship. Business is all about relationships. it's all about how you make people feel, right? And I built a relationship with the city, with the park board who owned that property. I think what happened is they felt so bad for me that when another project came up, they had a little bit of sympathy, and I got the next project, which was my first actual restaurant. The cafe was not licensed, but
what was that one called?
that was called The Mill Marine Bistro.
I remember.
And that was my first licensed restaurant. I opened it up. So the cafe I opened in 2001. The Mill I opened up in 2003. And I blew, so you got to remember, the first one I was losing 40K a year. The Mill, I blew my 3 months projections. I blew my 12-month projections in the first 3 months. Now this is just because I really suck at projecting.
What do you mean you blew? I don't understand. What does that mean?
What I thought I would do in a year in revenues there, I did in the first 3 months.
Oh, that's great.
So the Mill was really
that was a success.
What gave me the appetite to continue in this industry.
So there's a lesson there, right? There's a lesson. You opened up this coffee shop, which you worked hard to get that deal, like to get the property.
Yeah.
I'm sure you put a lot of time, effort, and consideration into the reno to make it nice. You put your heart and soul into it, and then you lost $40,000 in 1 year.
Correct.
So how did you go from? And this is the lesson. This is the lesson that I want to pull out. How did you go from your first attempt in the hospitality industry with a coffee shop to losing $40,000 on $100,000 in revenue? How did you go from doing that to having the appetite and having the will and not quitting and not saying, maybe this hospitality thing isn't for me?
That's a good question. I mean, I think we all need to have a little bit of chutzpah, a little bit of audacity and a belief in ourselves. And I knew this was the wrong location, but I also believed
for the coffee shop.
For the coffee shop, and there wasn't much of an opportunity because it was always going to be marred by the branding of the community center. It's in the lobby of the community center. There's very little I could do. The Harbor Green location that came up for the Mill was actually only a block down the street, but it was waterfront, it was a developing neighborhood, and I knew that I needed to get into a higher guest check to really be able to make a difference. The coffee shop, people were coming in and I think I was selling coffee for $1.50 at the time, and lattes were like $2.50 or something. And I was making sandwiches and scooping ice cream and, got carpal tunnel syndrome after scooping all summer long and making soups. The coffee shop didn't give me the opportunities to really express myself the way I believed that I knew how to do.
But weren't you scared? Weren't you scared going from the coffee shop, putting in that attempt, trying so hard over the course of the year, and then having it fail, and then I understand that you knew all of its weak points in terms of location and everything, but to go from that fail to then say, oh, you know what, I failed at having a coffee shop, therefore I'm going to open up a restaurant. So that doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
It's doubling down, when you believe in
But it's doubling down on the fact that you failed. Ultimately, you made the right decision.
Maybe it was stupid. I don't know.
Right, but ultimately you made the right decision because now you are where you are and you have the scale that you do. But I guess what I'm trying to get out of you is, what advice would you give to people who are trying something and failing? How did you continue?
Yeah.
How did you have the will to continue?
That's a good question. I mean, I knew that I believed in myself, and I really truly believed that I had something different to offer. And it's important to know what you're good at, and it's important to know what you're not good at. It's important to know who you are. And I just recognized a market vacancy, an opportunity, and then I went to seek people that I knew could help me bring that vision to fruition because I knew my weaknesses, and they are great. Let me tell you, they're greater than my strengths. And my only real strength is to surround myself with people that can help materialize what I see, my vision. And it only works when they see it as well, right? You can't force that. So I think the fact that I didn't quit was, and there has to be a little bit of dumb luck in there as well, right? I mean, I will attribute a lot of my success to dumb luck.
But no, I won't.
You make your luck on many, many levels.
I disagree with you.
Okay.
No, but I disagree
with you.
No, I disagree with you because I saw the different iterations
Yeah.
of hospitality that you went through.
Yeah.
I saw your high-end concept. I saw your cocktail bar. I saw this coffee shop. I saw the ice cream.
Yeah.
I saw the mill.
Yeah.
I saw the brewery. So I've seen it all. So
Yeah.
you were doing trial and error. Kind of, you were sticking and moving. You were failing. You got out of it. You pivoted. You took the knowledge that you have there. So I think really the lesson that I get from you and that I've observed from you and that I've applied to my own life is that constant iteration. It's that constant failure. Do you mind
100%.
if I tell you a little bit, like just anecdotally, of my story and how I think of you
Yeah, please.
and your story and why I keep going? So, as you know, my business is working with Valeria on her celebrity brand. We have 16 or 17 people, and we've tried different things. We've tried. There's the main business, which is our brand partnerships. We tried to did like a book. We tried a clothing line. We tried digital products. No, we didn't try. When I say a book, like an ebook, we tried clothing, accessories. We're about to start an academy. So we're doing all of these different things. And when Valeria comes to me, who's my business partner, and she says to me, well, we keep trying all these things, and this doesn't work, and that doesn't work, and this doesn't work. I remind her, and I say, Daniel tried so many different things in hospitality, in his business, in the market that he's in, and he eventually came up with a concept, which is tap and barrel, which we'll get into. He came up with it, and then he scaled what worked. So you and I are scaling what works with audience growth and brand partnerships, and we're also we're spending here. We're losing money. We're losing money on this. Like we lost money on our clothing brand, and we shuttered it because we knew when to stop it. Right. I just want you to know that I got that from observing you.
Yeah. Wow. Well, I don't know if I deserve the credit, but we have been around each other, and you've definitely seen all the trials and tribulations. Yeah. Look, I think you're absolutely right. The first 10 years, from 2001, opening the coffee shop, till 2011, those were my educational years, and there was a lot of trial and error. Opening concepts, closing concepts, trying different things, takeouts, concessions, fine dining, cocktail bar. There was everything within there. Event venues, retail, the souvenir shops.
Yeah, I remember.
There was just everything within there. And it took that 10 years to be able to strategically formulate a plan that I really believed would be able to scale. It took that 10 years for me to come up with Tap and Barrel. If it wasn't for that 10 years, I never would have come up with Tap and Barrel. And then that afforded me the opportunity to finally realize that I needed something that was scalable, as you said. So that's the importance of not giving up, because you don't know. Like we said, it's a meandering road. It's not like you can start here and say, I'm going to be here in 2 or 3 years from now. You start here and you meander and you go back and forth.
You're 100% right. And I draw the parallel to my own experiences where one little thing takes, and then you try to scale that, and simultaneously you're trying to do other things, and you're trying to find, as you're saying, that meandering road. That iterative process over time, I think that's what's really important. Would you say that? Okay, so for me, when we're going through that iteration with Valeria, and we have good times, we have tough times, we have snags, whatever it may be, when that happens, I think back, I really do, because you're like one of the closest people to me, is like, I think back to your story and how you kept iterating. When you were doing that, who was helping you? Who was coaching you? Who was helping you get through those moments where you're like, okay, I have multiple, like I'm failing on multiple fronts and different things. This is doing well, but that's not doing great. Like, who did you have to get you out of those ruts and to convince you that you should keep going?
Well, first of all, I've always had so much love and support in my life from friends. You're one of those people, by the way, who has helped me along the way. And we've had many conversations along the way. And you mentioned COVID earlier. I was in a dark place for a few months there when you and I had that conversation, that fateful conversation when I was driving up to Whistler, I think, and you were trying to knock me into shape. But and thank you for that. But
sorry, please continue, but
Yeah.
I want to go to that. I want to talk about that conversation, and I want to talk about what I said to you.
okay.
Because yeah, I want to get to that because
Okay.
it was important. I remember what I said
Yeah.
to you, but please continue.
Okay. I'll just add that one of the things that I have been fortunate, extremely fortunate with in my life, and this part is not necessarily luck. This is the chutzpah part, right? The audacity, where I've reached out to people that I really want to model, that I want to, that I aspire to emulate in some way. Ever since I was young, I've looked out and said, okay, who do I aspire to be like? And I've sought out mentors, and I think mentorship, I cannot express how important finding good mentors are in your life. And one of the first mentors that really blazed a path for me, and he might not even realize how impactful he was to me, but he was, and still is today, by the way, is my dear friend Anthony Von Mandel, who today owns White Claw, the beverage company, and Mike's Hard Lemonade, and the Mark Anthony Group, Mission Hill.
That's a multi-billion-dollar business, right?
Oh yeah. And he is an extraordinary person who took the time to talk to me and to guide me whenever I needed advice. And there were many in my life. Today I spend a lot of time with a dear friend, a guy named Jeff Mooney, who, he's the main shareholder behind A&W Restaurants in Canada. A&W Restaurants, A&W Root Beer, and just an incredible mentor in my life. And there are actually many others that have really impacted my strategic and critical thinking that I can go to. So I recommend that any young entrepreneur seek somebody.
So, I mean, okay, I agree with you. I've always had a problem with that, where I think I have a bit of a, I think where you and I differ is I have a bit of a chip on my shoulder. So I literally have maybe, 2 or 3 people, you were one of them, who I'll actually talk to. But I think that I've always admired that about you, and I've always admired the quality of people you've had around you, whether it's your mentors or whoever it may be. But when you talk about the importance of having a mentor, I agree with you. I think it's really important. I think it's a massive shortcut, and it's a massive value add. But how do you do it? So I think, if I'm somebody watching this, I'm trying to understand. So I'm sold on the fact that you have to have a mentor. How do you do it? How did you get to these people who are running multi-billion-dollar corporations, and how are you friends with them? Like, how does this happen?
Well, I mean, at the time, Anthony was not running a multi-billion-dollar corporation, but it was a very big company, nonetheless.
But why would he listen? Like, why would he give you the time of day?
Anthony, I was lucky because actually he started selling wine when he was peddling wine out of the back of his car when he was just out of UBC as a student. He started selling it to Bridges Restaurants. So I actually met him through my dad and through my uncle, and that's how I originally met him. And when I got into the restaurant business, I had bumped into him, and I told him what I was doing, and he said, "Hey, anytime you want to meet or get together, your family was very helpful to me." So that's how it started there. But after that, and even if people don't have a direct connection like that, there are mentors today that I have reached out to that some have not responded, and many have responded. And I think people that are successful, they want to help. They want to impart that knowledge. They realize, because at some point they know that somebody has helped them. And you can't just get there on your own. It takes a village. It takes an army. I didn't get there on my own. I got there because of so many incredible people around me, and I'm still riding the wave because of so many extraordinary people. So I think it's important to just reach out, look at who's out there, and just reach out and say, "Hey, can I buy you a coffee? Or can I buy you lunch?" And it can't be opportunistic.
Right.
You know, it can't be, you know, I want you to help me, you know, by financing me or whatever it is, you know. You have to truly want to just seek knowledge. And that's a key part of it. And everybody's happy to impart knowledge.
Why are they happy to impart knowledge?
I mean, anybody that's successful, that has done that's gone through the, you know, the process, the hardships, they're happy to, because, you know, I believe that they have a memory of when they needed a bit of help or a boost, or, I mean, I've done it as well recently, where I've spoken to young entrepreneurs and helped, you know, impart some knowledge on them, or made a connection, or...
I think, excuse me, what you're talking about is a really great cheat code that not nearly enough people understand, is to contact someone who you think will not give you the time of day and ask for nothing except for knowledge. And I think anybody who's listening to this, that's something that you may want to take from this. And I think that may dramatically change the trajectory of your life. It's not something that I've done, and it's probably something that I should have been doing. And, you know, maybe, oddly enough, people come to me in this capacity, especially in the industry that we're in, because, you know, we're so public facing. But that's a really good lesson, Daniel.
You know, it's said that you are the mean average of the 5 people you spend the most time with in your life, and
that's real.
It is real, and if you surround yourself with extraordinary people, you're going to rise to the occasion. Just, it'll naturally happen.
Have you ever had a dilemma where, as you were kind of coming up, and as you were advancing, and as you were evolving, and as the circle of friends became more, I'm not trying to sound like elitist, like just the quality of that sounds bad too, but you know what I'm talking about. People who had more experience, they had more value to offer, people who were doing more. While you were going up on that trajectory, what happened to the friends who were kind of still good with the status quo?
Look, I think, you know, in life we have many kinds of friends, and not everybody is excited for your success, if that's what you're referring to.
No, it's not. It's not what I'm referring to. I'm just referring to, you have less and less in common with somebody. Like, you know, when you and I get together, we talk about, you tell me everything about your business, and you know, I'll give you my opinion. I tell you everything about my business, and I'll get your opinion. And, you know, we'll talk about our health. We'll talk about our fitness. We'll talk about, like, I was just talking about cold plunging with you and all of the stuff that I do. So you and I, we're always talking about how to improve.
Yeah.
Right? So when the conversations you and I have, they're around business, they're around health, they're around fitness, they're around diet, they're around, like, ways to continue to optimize ourselves as individuals. So I guess my question to you is as you continue to progress and evolve, when you have friends who are still talking to you about nothing, like, I don't know, they're talking to you about gossip, or they're talking to you about, you know, things that aren't about improving, how do you phase those people out, or do you phase those people out? Because you have a limited amount of time, right?
It happens by itself, right? I mean, it's not something that you have to really, it's not something that I curate or that I think about. There are some friends in my life, excuse the term, but I would say that I've had to fire because of negativity, and cut the cord. But I mean, generally, life is too busy, and you just naturally surround yourself with and spend time with the people that you love and that help you rise. So, you know, I mean, there's a lot of people. I've been fortunate to have some wonderful people in my life, and I've also had some people in my life that, frankly, I just don't think about, or I don't really revert back to, because it was a moment of time, but, you know, they didn't, you know, necessarily, you know, they didn't necessarily convince me that there's a reason to hang on. So, I mean, it naturally happens because, like you said, I mean, you know, time is the most valuable thing we have here. We have a finite amount of time. Life is not a dress rehearsal. Right. So you're going to spend the time, you know, doing the things you love with the people that you love, and that's it.
Yeah. I think that what I'm getting from you is that while you're progressing and while you're investing your energy and time and all of your efforts into improving yourself and improving your family, and once you do that, it's almost like it's a natural process that people drift apart, because if they're not trying to do the same, and I think that's probably one of the reasons why you and I have stayed great friends, even when time goes by when we don't talk for extended periods of time, is because we're both trying. We're both all putting in constant effort.
Yeah, people grow, and the thing I really value about our friendship is that we're both growing together, and we both support each other's growth.
Yeah.
And then you have people that don't necessarily grow or support your growth or are interested in growth, and that's fine. If time stands still for them and they want to stay back in time, but I'm on this trajectory, and some people are not, and that's, there's nothing wrong with that at all. But
I have friends, who are younger, and they've often mentioned to me that, and they're doing well, they're progressing, and they remind me of, like, you and I when we were like, this is like people who are 20 years younger than us, and they have that problem where they're progressing, and people who thought would later lifelong friends are not.
yeah,
And it's a dilemma for people with a high level of, I guess, not morality, but just, like, I guess, empathy for their friends and love for their friends, to have to let go of those people.
Yeah, and I can see that being more of a problem for somebody that's 20 years younger than us, because they're right in the thick of that social environment.
Yeah.
Whereas we've already eliminated so much in our lives, right? I mean, at the end of the day, we've come to the point where we've realized that less is more, and we want to simplify our lives.
Yeah. No, you just reminded me of something funny that happened between you and I. You probably don't remember. This was maybe, I want to say, 15 years ago. No, maybe it was like our early 30s, and I had met this person in Toronto, and she was going to Vancouver at some point, and I remember calling you saying, "Hey, Daniel, there's this person, and she's going to be in Vancouver," and you said, "Well, what is she about?" And then I realized that there was no, like, it was just social. Like, it was just this person that I had met. She had some business or something. I didn't think there was a business connection, but I thought, oh, I just connected you guys. I thought I'd connect you. And I remember you saying, and you were really nice about it too. You weren't like a jerk about it. You said, "Gary, honestly, I'm so busy. I'm trying to actually get rid of people now. So if you want to introduce me to somebody, like if there's value kind of thing, like if there's going to be a value exchange, then great. But like if not," and I was like, "Yeah, you're right." And I remember that taught me a lesson too. I've learned so much from you.
That's hilarious.
That taught me a lesson. It's these little moments that you get these lessons, and I was like, okay, I have to be more like deliberate with who I surround myself with, because I just offered Daniel to meet like pretty much a stranger, and you said, "No, I'm busy. Like, unless there's a point, why am I meeting this person?"
You have to protect your calendar.
Yes.
Right? You really have to protect your calendar. And be intentional about if it's not part of your mission, your vision, your goals, if it doesn't work towards getting you there, and I'm not talking just business, I'm talking about your mission, vision, I'm talking about your life, what a life worth living means to you. And if that is not something that's going to, run in parallel with that, then you've just got to protect your calendar.
Absolutely, absolutely. I want to talk about the conversation we had at COVID.
Yeah.
Okay. I remember I was in my car. Are you okay?
Yeah.
I remember I was in my car.
This is delicious, by the way.
It's not bad, right?
Yeah, it's great. I like it.
Yeah. They're good guys too. They're. I met with one of them I've only talked to on video calls, but one of them actually came down here to meet with me. Great guy.
It's got Riz.
Riz. Well, it's called Rizzo. It's called Rizzo Radiance.
It's got Riz. I'm feeling the Riz.
Well, there's no alcohol in there.
Okay. Oh, too bad. Now you tell me.
You want to get it? You want me to pour some drinks for us?
Yeah, let's throw some tequila in there.
In the middle of the day? What time is it? I didn't set my watch.
I think it's time to drink.
No,
I think it's
you're
12:40.
Nah, I don't drink alcohol. I'll have a drink with you though.
All right.
I sparingly drink, only with good friends. And I don't see you that often because I live in Miami and you live in Vancouver. I actually moved further away from where we used to live on different sides of Canada. Now we're like diagonally separated.
Now it's east and south. Well, hey, I'm really glad you pushed me hard to come down here to do this in person.
Yes.
It definitely beats doing a
and it gives us an excuse to hang out.
Yeah.
So I remember in the height of COVID, listen, everybody was on edge. I was on edge, although I had a digital business that I was able to kind of weather that storm, and we actually grew through COVID because social media had, kind of went up. But I know that for you and for a lot of your, probably for all of your kind of your colleagues in the industry, your competitors, and anybody in the hospitality industry who had as many restaurants as you had and have, that was such an extreme circumstance. Like, people really need to put into perspective what happened, right? Like, the world basically stopped, and we all know what happened with COVID. But for a restaurateur, it's devastating. And I remember I was talking to you, and I heard that you were down, and I heard that you were concerned, and I even felt that you were trying to downplay it, even to me. And I remember I kind of gave you what I refer to as the shit talk, and I said, "Sorry, do you not remember who you are? Do you not remember what you've built? Do you not remember where you came from and what you've accomplished? And you're letting a situation that is, it's not like you messed up. It's not like you did something wrong. It's not like you made an error. The whole world is feeling this right now. How do you even for a second, why are you down? Because look what you've done. And this is completely out of your control.
Yeah.
Whatever you need to do, I remember telling you, whatever you need to do, you're going to do it. But I said, but you're Daniel Frankel. You're the best at this. Like, you're the best. There's nobody better in this industry than you. And I think that shook you to be like, yeah, fuck, you're right.
Yeah, you really pumped my tires during that call, and it was a dark moment. And sometimes we're embarrassed to share publicly that we have dark moments. I mean, everybody's entitled to their feelings, and it's okay to go to a dark place as long as you can go back. You know me, I'm so positive and optimistic. I mean, I was embarrassed to say this to other people, even to my key associates.
No, but you could say it to me, but
yeah.
But Daniel, like, for you to be embarrassed about being like struggling as a restaurateur through COVID, you just took it personally. Like, you personally did something wrong. You didn't do anything. Are you kidding me? Yeah. They closed your doors and said nobody can come in.
Correct. Yeah.
Like, how is that your fault?
And those were the early days of COVID, where there was no visibility to.
None.
And we are very much, creatures of habit, right? Like, we like what we can predict. We like the habits, and all of a sudden, everything we know has been, taken away from us, and it was a very difficult time. But in times like that, I mean, your friendship really helped push me through. The other thing, by the way, I don't know if you remember, but you also pushed me to focus on my health, which you said, dude, you have a Peloton that's been sitting there for months.
I remember.
Collecting dust.
I remember. You
said, what do you think? There's a climatization period that you have to let it sit there? No, you fucking get on it every day, and you ride and you focus on your health.
Yeah.
You motivated me, and that was important. That's where I turned my health around. Felt the energy, the endorphins. I mean, that was really an important conversation. Those conversations are important.
Absolutely, and that's why I think the moral of the story, because I want to dig into the COVID situation a bit, but I think the moral of the story is that when you have that friend, and I think you and I are a prime example of this, when you have that good friend who you can rely on, who you can count on. You know who does this well?
Who?
Women. Women do this very well. And women can have 10 different girlfriends who they tell everything to, and they have that ability to really lean on each other through difficult times. But I don't feel men do it that often, because a man, to be able to be that emotionally vulnerable, that's a difficult thing to do.
But in our friendship, there is nothing but vulnerability. I think, you're in good company when you are comfortable expressing absolutely anything. And that's one of the things I value about our friendship. I can tell you anything that I'm feeling, and I can also tell you when I'm pissed off with you, as I have done before. Certainly in Costa Rica last year, but I'm like,
wait a second. What did I do in Costa Rica?
Wait a minute.
Okay, maybe we won't.
No, when we had some political, we had some
political disagreement.
I'm talking about politics.
I lean one way a little bit more.
You were leaning a little too far,
and
I said, Gary, what the fuck? This is, but at least
I'm an extremist.
But we can talk, right? And we can respect
Absolutely.
our opinions.
Absolutely.
And that's all I was referring to, is that, we're comfortable being vulnerable and not bottling anything up. And you're right, maybe women do that better, but I think we do that.
I think for a man it's important to find a male friend.
Yeah.
And I think, there's been a theme in, I think it's called the mandom, where like there are certain influencers, like male influencers who are like ultra masculine, and they don't talk about like exposing your emotions to other men, but they often talk about that like brotherhood being such an important aspect of a man's just overall health and success and wellness and everything. And I really do feel it's not emphasized and addressed enough. And obviously you and I are fortunate, but I have a feeling that there are young men who are kind of more at the start of their careers, and they may not have created families yet, who are in their 20s, let's say, who they're not building those bridges. They're not, no pun intended to the restaurant that you acquired, they're not building those bridges. I want to get into COVID for a bit, because the reason I want to look at COVID as a bit of a case study is because, as I mentioned before, that's an extremely difficult thing. That's like a tough situation on steroids, especially in the industry that you're in. So I guess I want to know, and as much as you can talk about it, how did you get through that? Like, how did you, after like the shock of the situation, because again, unprecedented, unheard of, who would have thought? How did you kind of regroup, because you were driving a 1,300 person boat? So maybe talk to me about how you got through that logistically.
For me, the early days of COVID were the tough days because of the uncertainty. Then the government stepped in and started making it rain, right? They made it actually probably a little too easy, and helped boats that would have sank otherwise, help them stay afloat.
You're talking about restaurants specifically?
Yeah, well, like all businesses, right? Like the government support was maybe at some point a little too plentiful. And don't get me wrong, I'm very grateful for the support. We needed the support. We wouldn't have survived without the support. I'm just saying it went on for a little too long. But nonetheless, that doesn't negate the fact that you have to be strategic during these times. And I won't even pretend that I, kept the boat afloat. I had such an unbelievable time. First of all, I think your stars shine brightest when it's dark out. And it was very dark. The environment was very dark. And our stars, my key people, they really shone bright. Now, conversely, the ones that are bringing the organization down, they also shine bright in the opposite way. There's a spotlight on them, and you realize. So COVID was an opportunity for us to, first of all, clean house a little bit and realize who our stars were and who to celebrate and what attitudes we needed to galvanize as an organization and as a culture moving forward. Early on we realized, okay, we cannot let a good pandemic pass us by without becoming better and stronger and more resilient and more robust. And we really did that. And I have to give a tremendous amount of credit to our president, Jason Forbes, who has an incredible amount of knowledge and know-how, but he's calm and he's grounded and he makes decisions strategically. He doesn't shoot from the hip. And he knows how to respond quickly as well. So I supported him and our key leadership in the decisions that they made early on, whether it was financial, let's continue to pay people before we knew that there were subsidies that were going to come out. Let's take care of our people and pay them. Whatever, and these are decisions that, were costly decisions, but I supported 100% of the decisions that he and my leadership team made. And we really bonded. I mean, COVID, we wouldn't be where we are today. Maybe financially we would be a little bit ahead because we had a few projects that we dropped, but that doesn't matter. We'll catch up on the back end really quickly. What matters is that we galvanized a culture that is so tight right now and so incredibly aligned that it's helping us to grow with intention right now and to make decisions that are really helping us to move the needle forward. It also helped us walk away from certain things that I'm glad we didn't commit to.
Like what?
Well, we had a few things that we had this big brewery project. It was a brewery, it was a hotel, it was a restaurant, an event space. There was also the parking lot across the street from it that we were buying. We were the real estate and I mean, I'm not in the hotel business, and like there were things that we walked away from that we were close on closing. I'm talking imminent. Like I think we were to close on that deal at the end of April, and COVID hit in March.
Right.
That I'm actually thankful.
Right.
There was another location
that helped you
in Central Surrey that we walked away from. So I'm glad that we walked away from those. It really helped us seek the clarity that we needed to attain a strategy of growth, which right now we're on a very clear path. It helped us understand that the main thing is to keep the main thing the main thing.
Got it.
That's the main thing.
Got it. And let me ask you this: you're working on. You have 6 restaurants currently operating. There are 2 under construction, right?
There's 2 more under construction right now.
Okay. At the most, I've had a 400-person company. I can't imagine how the hell you run a 1,300-person company. So can you maybe talk to me a little bit about, you don't have to like get into too many details, but like how many people do you talk to? There's no way you're talking to 1,300 people.
I basically have 3 direct reports.
Right.
That's it. Now, I talk to a lot of people because I love to talk to a lot of people.
Sure.
I love to stay close to the senior leadership team, of course the executive team, but the senior leadership team, the regional team, but then, on the restaurant level, I love meeting with the GMs and the chefs, and I mean, they're the heart and soul of what we do. But effectively, I only really spend a lot of time, my world really is with my president, our CFO, and also my EA, and that's. But I spend a lot of time talking and dealing with our director of culinary and training, and with our regional director. But yeah, I think it's important to limit the direct reports.
Yeah.
Just so that I can stay focused on where I add value to the organization. So I think leaders have a very difficult time relinquishing control. That's something that a lot of people really mess up.
Yeah.
And they think, and I think a lot of it is ego as well. I think and I'm saying that from experience. I'm not saying that just as a thought, but for me, I held control as much as I could for as long as I could, and felt that I had to have my hand in everything. Right. And really, at the end of the day, I realized what I was doing was I was bottlenecking our opportunities and our growth, because if everything has to go through one person, then I realized, well, wait a minute, there's people in this organization that are just as passionate as me, just as smart, if not smarter than me at what they do, and why am I here standing in their way? Why don't I just support their... So stepping back is a really hard thing for an entrepreneur leader to do. Hired guns generally understand this, but I'm not a hired gun, I'm an entrepreneur leader, and I was just bottlenecking like crazy. So as soon as I started stepping back, now of course you need to feel comfortable with the people you have on board, and you need to have the right people on board. So that's really the only way to scale anything. The only way to scale something is to render yourself obsolete. And you can't look at that being a bad thing. That's success in my mind. When I render myself obsolete, it means nobody needs me because the organization is organic and it's grown to encompass my values and everything I stand for. And now it's just happening on its own. It's an extension of me, but it's not dependent upon me, and that's ideal. And the same goes for the boardroom. Like honestly, my personal definition of success is when I'm the dumbest guy in the boardroom. Sure. I know I'm successful. Then I take off and I go to, hang out on the beach with Gary Lipovetsky.
Yeah, no,
that's success for me.
That's fair. That's fair. That's fair. I'm still working on it. Our CEO Rachel, we've been now with her for 4 years, and I think she probably thinks I should have let go probably 2 years ago.
She's probably right.
She's probably right. Yeah. She's probably right. But it all worked out well. I mean, I feel we're really well connected now in terms of how we run things. What's the future for Tap? You know what? This reminds me. I So I got to say, I have an embarrassing story, and I feel embarrassed about it now. So before you probably don't even remember this, or maybe you do and you resent me for it. I remember when you first told me, we were at a restaurant. I don't remember where we were. We were somewhere in America, some city. I don't know what we were doing there, and you told me, and you wrote down the name of the restaurant of Tap and Barrel before you opened a single one, before it was even real. And you wrote it down, and I remember you wrote it down, and you kind of sketched out the logo, and you showed it to me. And I remember looking at it, and you told me the concept is, it's basically wine on tap. So that's the concept, right, of Tap and Barrel. I think that's one of your underlying. I think it maybe have just changed now, but that was initially, it was wine.
Initially it was just being the most sustainable restaurant, serving everything on tap, from local beers, local wines, trying to reduce our carbon footprint, supporting local purveyors.
Right.
That's where it all started, yes.
But so I remember you showing me the name and the logo, and I remember saying to you, Daniel, I don't think it's a good name. You have to remember two different words, Tap and Barrel. Nah, it's too much. And I remember, and then you blew up with it. And all these years, I'm thinking, wow, I hope he doesn't remember that I said that stupid thing to him.
I do remember that.
You do remember?
Yeah, you're so supportive.
Yeah, well, come on. It worked out.
Hey, you know what? You have to be honest, right? And,
listen.
A lot of people said that that's a stupid name, actually.
Okay, good. Now I don't feel so bad. Yeah. Am I in good company, or were they all dumb people who said that?
No, you're in good company. There were some people that I really value, and one was my dad. He said, "Really, Tap and Barrel? I don't come up with you can do better."
Yeah. Well, you obviously did do better. I mean, not on the name, but you executed the hell out of this business. There's a few things I know about you that I wanna mention, and I feel that these are the things that drive your success. And I want people to know, not so much to flatter you, but so people can understand what are the important elements of success. And I want to just kind of list them off as they come to me. So one of the things, which was more of an operational thing, but you've always, since I've known you, even though you've been, like once you got into the restaurant industry, and it may not have been as applicable, but you were always very heavily into technology. Like any kind of, consumer technology, software as a service pertaining to your industry. I remember a lot of our conversations are around technology. Mm-hmm. I feel you're like kind of like a tech-first entrepreneur. And I remember you always had the best computers. And I remember you coming to me saying, well, I got this laptop, this new Mac, and it's got this port, and it does this and this and this. And I was like, dude, like you could have paid a third of the price, and you could have gotten one that does the exact same thing, but you were always on the cutting edge of technology. So how important do you feel it is in any business? Like, and it's not as like, and you're not even in tech, but you realized, you identified that you need to be super, super tech savvy and tech fluent. So talk to me a little bit about your affinity for technology.
I mean, listen, I love anything that can help us achieve our goals and scale with consistency. And technology needs to be adapted in any industry, of course, and especially in hospitality, where it's been probably slower to adapt than many industries out there. What we're trying to do in hospitality fundamentally, on a fundamental level, we're trying to give the guest an incredible experience of connection. Sitting down, breaking bread together, dining. That is a very important. It's a very important act, especially in this day, especially in this time right now. Where we're feeling so much disconnect in this world, and so much anger in this world. So, if you can actually use technology to understand people's needs and to address those needs, whether it's CRM, I mean, what word do people, what's your favorite word in the world? The word that people love the most is their name. Mm-hmm. It's proven. That's Gary. Yeah. You love hearing that. People love hearing because...
You're talking about personalizing the experience. That's what you're talking about.
And that's how do you scale personalization when you're scaling a business that's growing in multiple locations and multiple geographies? How could you possibly do that without technology? Listen, if we had one restaurant and I was the GM maitre d' and I was there every day, I would know my guests and I would be able to give them that incredible personalized level of experience, so long as I'm there and I never take a vacation.
You're talking about, so okay, hold on a second. You're talking right now about kind of the analytics around consumer behavior.
Correct.
So you're
Yeah.
constantly getting data on what they order, what time they come in, like all of the different, I guess, aspects, and then you're optimizing your business based on that. In addition to that, I remember where you'd be like, you and I would be somewhere in midday, you'd be looking at your app. Oh, yep, this is where we're for 2:30 we're good. Like, and you could probably go into your phone right now and tell me from the morning. Well, mind you, it's still pretty early in Vancouver, but you can tell me exactly to the penny how much revenue.
Yeah.
Because you have your POS systems in each restaurant. Everything
It's like a 5-minute lag, but yeah, I could tell you within
a
5
5-minute lag.
Yeah.
We're gonna have to call tech support on that.
I know.
We're really gonna need it down to under a minute.
We need it down to the second.
Yes, but
Yeah.
I mean that's always been really important to you. So I think that's an important lesson that regardless of the industry that you're in,
Yeah.
you really, really should be optimizing with technology. I think there are
Yeah.
tools for everything now. No matter what you get into, there's going to be tools for it. The other thing that it's kind of almost like a little shift away from the technology, but it's in the same field, is that you've always known your numbers. And I remember talking with you. There have been times when you've started talking to me about margins, about revenues, about all of the different things like costs and stuff. And then when you've been negotiating your leases, that is something that you're always on top of. So can you talk about, for an entrepreneur, how important is it to be really, really deep into the numbers and on the financials?
So, I thank you for saying that, but I have to tell you, I'm not as on top of the numbers as I should be. Mm-hmm. And that's a great reminder for me. So thank you for bringing that up. You have to be obsessed about your numbers. At the end of the day, that's the scorecard. That's the ultimate scorecard. Mm-hmm. I mean, your happiness is the ultimate scorecard, but whether you're going to survive or thrive, that's the numbers. And if you don't take the time to really understand, most importantly, your balance sheet, of course your P&Ls are important as well, but you can't really understand how to move the levers without understanding how they impact the numbers. Mm-hmm. So it's critical. And I remember when, not my current CFO, but I had an accountant that worked for me that came into my office one day, and this is many, many years ago, and said, Daniel, I'm going to give you a lesson right now. Mm-hmm. I'm going to go through numbers 101 with you.
Okay.
Because I know every month when I put the P&Ls down on your desk, you don't look at them, you don't understand them. And I needed that.
I always thought you were on top of it.
No, I wasn't.
You always gave this air of like, I know to the penny what everything is.
Not enough. I mean, certainly more today.
Yeah.
Because, and especially right now, because I am a little fearful of this looming recession. Mm-hmm. And the economic climate right now with interest and supply chain. And
that's been going on for a while. We've been talking about this looming recession for 2 years already.
I mean, I think we're actually in a recession.
Yeah.
And it's a very, it's impacting different industries differently right now. But I mean, I guess it's not a recession until someone officially calls it a recession. Sure. But hey, I'm calling it a recession, and it is a little frightening. But
I think it's a COVID-induced recession. I think what's going on right now is the economy, with all these interest rates, they're still absorbing the economy is absorbing the consequence of printing all this money. Mm-hmm. in Canada and in the U.S.
Yeah. Oh, and just coming back to we'll never come back to the normal that we knew pre-COVID.
Why do you say that?
Well, I mean, I don't foresee interest rates being sub 2% in my lifetime. I would love that. Mm-hmm. Don't get me wrong. I would just love that. I mean, money was free.
So, Daniel, the other thing, there's two other things. One is your appreciation for the arts. So I remember visiting you when I was in my late 20s in Vancouver, and I remember your mom taking us to a play. And I remember not liking it because I'm just not an artsy guy, because I was never exposed to it. You were exposed to it. Your mom was very big and is still very big into the arts, and that kind of resonates with you. And where I see it applied to your business is the interiors and the design. And I remember you're always so excited about the designs of your restaurants and the piece of artwork that you're going to buy for like the room, like one of these, like a space in the restaurant.
Yeah.
So how important is, we've talked about technology, we've talked about, the analytics behind the finances, but how important is that artistic vision and that appreciation for the arts when it comes to business? And should entrepreneurs be developing their artistic side?
Yeah, absolutely they should be. I mean, first of all, I believe that how you do anything is how you do everything.
Yes. I tell my sons that all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, now we open our doors to our guests, just as you opened your door to your guest here today.
Yeah.
And how important is your environment?
Mm-hmm.
How much time and energy do you spend thinking about this environment that you're going to create and how that will impact your guest, how that will make them feel comfortable or discomfort, how that will, guide them along their journey while they're spending time here. I was here for Shabbat dinner a few nights ago. I mean, it was an unbelievable journey. It was extraordinary. The hospitality, first of all, you are great at hospitality. And you're not even in the hospitality business, but you kind of are. My glass was never half empty. It was always full. And, I was welcomed with the proverbial hug and literal hugs.
Sure.
And kisses. And the conversation was rich. And, I mean, even the music was rich after the dinner.
You were great, yeah.
We had an incredible time. So I think it's critical. And I've actually started taking it to the next step now, and I've been an artist for my whole life, and now I'm actually creating installation pieces and art pieces in my restaurants. So whereas I used to design a space, and I've held on to the ID for my restaurants. I work with a designer, but I work with a designer mostly for permitting reasons. But as far as the vibe and the feel, I hold on to that very closely. And where I used to start with the spatial layout and the guest flow and then work the art in, I've actually now reversed the process, and I'm starting with what is the immersive, artistic, creative experience that I want the guest to experience.
Right.
And it will start there, and then I reverse engineer it, and okay, great. So let's start with the installation pieces, and then now let's start populating different zones for people to habitate and to sit in and to dine in.
That attention to detail is, it's crucial, I think, in your business.
It is.
Does it translate to the food as well, your artistic vision?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, 100%. And I've got an extraordinary culinary team, our executive chef of culinary development, and a tasting panel that consistently, we're probably about almost a year out from development to hitting a menu. In fact, today we are launching our winter core menu. I'm not even in Vancouver for that.
What's a dish that you can't miss? Like because I haven't been to Vancouver in years, but if I'm in Vancouver and you're going to take me out, what's that one dish that I have to have that I have to try? Because I remember there was the burger with the peanut butter on it. That was years ago. Do you still do that?
Oh my goodness. We still do that.
You still do that.
Gary, the funny story about that is the PBJ burger, which is peanut butter. It's not peanut butter and jam. It's actually peanut butter and a bacon jam. A reduced bacon jam, which a lot of people say, ooh, gross. But when you think about Thai food flavors and influences,
peanut,
yeah, it's very much peanut and meat, right? So it's a delicious flavor profile, especially when you render it down together. So we took it off the menu momentarily for a short period of time. I remember years ago, this was shortly after we opened, I was at the Olympic Village Tap and Barrel location, and somebody had gotten out of a cab. I was standing at the host stand, and somebody came in and said, this was my first stop. I just flew into town. I need to have a PBJ burger.
Oh, wow.
And I had to tell this guest, I'm so sorry, we took it off our menu. That was the moment that I realized, everybody doesn't have to absolutely love that. It's not one of our most ordered items, but the few people that love it are just obsessed about it.
They're fanatics.
They're fanatics.
Okay, so tell me, what is that dish, though, today? What is that dish that I have to have?
God.
You won't let me leave until I try?
Well, one of the things that pops to my mind, which ironically we took off the menu just at Bridges and it's coming back as of today, is the hummus. And I know that's just a starter item and it's just a very simple item, but it started off as my mom's hummus recipe. which we had ever since we were kids. Now I have to say it has been modified a bit, and sorry Ima, but maybe even improved a little bit. But I mean, we bake the pita bread from scratch when you order it. Yeah. We make everything from scratch at Tap and Barrel, and it's one of my all-time go-to dishes.
I want to say something right now. Something that I observed right now that I've always known with entrepreneurs and with you specifically. I see your tone change when you talk about the things that you're passionate about. When you talk about this hummus and you talk about this peanut butter burger, and you talk about the interior design of your restaurant, you have just a different look in your eye and a different spark about you than obviously when you talk about technology or accounting. So I think that's really important. I think it's so important to identify what your passions are and to double down on them in your business, and to really apply yourself to those elements of the business. And we talked upon it before, and that's relationships. So where I see these relationships developing for you is obviously from a day-to-day with your team. Yeah. You've always been very keen on developing people, and it's like you mentioned, you develop them to the point where you can let go and you give them the autonomy that they need. So you've always been very good about maintaining those relationships, and that's a cue I've taken from you. And they're obviously members of my team that I interact with, more often than others, and I've formed what I believe are those level of relationships. But you also have relationships with the people who are able to get you locations, right? Like you're able to get premium locations for your restaurants because of the nature of and the quality of your relationships and your reputation. So if somebody wanted to understand and learn, I think for you it comes naturally, your ability to build relationships, because it's genuine. How do people do that? So if I'm starting out, or if I'm well into my business and I've identified that I need to get better at developing relationships, how does one develop relationships?
Well, I mean, I think it's important when you look at the relationships around you, and we call them our stakeholders. Our stakeholders are our employees, our vendors, our landlords, my team. They're all stakeholders because they all have a stake in this. So I think if you look at it from that perspective, and then you ask yourself, what are the needs of my stakeholders? And you address those needs. I think that's a critical way to approach relationships. Whether it's your staff, your team, what I need to achieve with my team is I need to help them to live a life worth living because they say it's worth living. Not because I said it was worth living and I'm putting this great package in a box together for you and here you go, but because they say this is what success looks like for me. And the same thing goes for my landlords or my vendors. So to sit down and understand exactly what does success look like for you, and how can we, there's sometimes is a very aggressive old school business mentality, and I've come across this quite often where people think that they've only won when they've taken everything off the table. Right. And I don't subscribe to that. I think you have to leave something on the table for everybody. Yeah. And that's success. And that really, predicates the whole relationship analogy and how you approach your relationships.
You've been speaking of relationships. You've been very vocal, and you've been a big proponent of YPO, which is Young Presidents Organization, and you've been there for quite some time. I was briefly with YPO back in 2012, and I kind of regret not continuing with it, but there were some extenuating circumstances around my exodus from YPO. Is that about the relationships? I mean, or is that about the experience? Because you always speak so fondly about it.
Yeah. No, I mean, YPO, first of all, I have to say, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for YPO in many ways.
Really?
Yes,
it's
absolutely.
Played that much of a role in your success?
It has, yeah, because it's put me in touch with really incredible people. Speaking of relationships, first of all, at the heart of YPO is a forum. I don't think you joined a forum.
I did.
Right? You did, but very briefly. You didn't.
I was in a forum, and I think I may have met with my forum. A forum, basically, so everybody knows, it's when various business leaders who are members of YPO get together. I believe mine was maybe 9-10 guys. I think.
Yes, anywhere from 8 to 10.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
And, we get together and we really, people really pour their hearts out. People really say, these are the challenges I'm going through.
You get vulnerable.
And then collectively everybody helps each other. And there's obviously this, wall of secrecy. And even though I only went for a few, a handful of times, I left there and I always kept my mouth shut. And, it's this brotherhood, kind of going back to, to brotherhood. So I think it further illustrates the importance of, it's all men, right?
No, it's
in the
not
forum?
all men. No, I don't have, my forum, I don't have a woman in my forum. I wish I did. But a lot of forums have female members, male members. It's not, there's no requirement either way. My forum just happens not to have, and I think it's important for diversity and for perspective. And I would love if we could find a woman to join. But I mean, exactly as you described it, we were talking earlier about the brotherhood. We were talking about the importance of going deep and being vulnerable. And that's something that YPO really taught me, because before that, okay, there's two things. You also mentioned your old friends, from your previous life earlier on in this conversation. YPO kind of, gave me, a refill on new friends, but at a much different echelon, at a level that, it helped me rise to a different level of depth and vulnerability that I wasn't used to, that I was a little uncomfortable about in the beginning. And now I'm more than comfortable to go to that depth. So the forum is at the heart of YPO, and as you described, it's a group of people that are in non-competing industries so that they're comfortable talking about anything. So there's no restaurateur in my forum. We're all in non-competing industries, and we help make each other better. And we basically, we share knowledge and information, and we educate each other, and we discuss the 3 pillars of life. We discuss our personal lives, our business, and our families. And I have had more personal and development and growth. I mean, when I joined YPO, I thought, okay, this is a great business organization.
Yeah.
I was in EO before that, Entrepreneurs Organization, also a great organization at a different company size or level. And then I moved, and I quit that, but then I joined YPO, and it just really expanded my horizons. It taught me to really look at things from a very different perspective. And for that reason, and YPO also opened the door for HBS for me. It was the YPO Harvard program that I attended, which was the very first exec ed program in the US. I mean, that's what started executive education. The founder of YPO and JFK were very good friends, and they started the President's Program at Harvard. So there's a history there, and overall, a friend of mine, when I joined YPO, he said to me, "Listen, this is like a gym membership. You only get out of it what you put into it. I encourage you to go, head first and to commit 100%, and you are going to get a ton out of it." Shortly after that, I joined the executive. I'm currently serving as co-chapter chair. And so this will be my last year effectively on the executive, but I have gotten so much out of YPO, and I'm so happy to give back as much as I can.
Daniel, if you had to talk to somebody, let's say you were mentoring, and they came to you and they're young and they're having trouble, we talked about iteration, we talked about trying new things. What would be the advice that you would tell someone who's on the verge of quitting?
I mean, that's a tough one. If somebody's on the verge of quitting, they're in a dire place. My advice would be to talk to other successful people, because at one point or another, they've all quit. I've quit before. You've quit before. But then we lifted ourselves back up. And I think unless you realize that you're not alone, quite often when you're in the state where you're about to quit, we internalize and we think that we failed, and we think that failure is a bad thing. And failure is not a bad thing because, I mean, you miss 100% of the shots that you never take.
Yes.
At least you've taken the shot that you've gotten to the place where you've failed. So if you pick yourself back up, you're that much more likely to succeed. And if you fall again and pick yourself back up, now your chances are even greater.
Yeah.
So I think it's really important that that person that's about to quit actually talks to other people that have succeeded, because only people that have succeeded know how important it is to feel that quit, that failure.
Yeah. You know, when things get really hard, that's kind of like when you have those scary times in entrepreneurship. They're always tough, but you know, I just had I don't know if you know Michelle Romano.
No.
She's on Dragon's Den. She's one of the dragons.
Oh, I saw your interview. Did you have an
No,
interview
it hasn't gone up yet.
Not
You're thinking
her.
of someone else.
Oh no, that was the other lady that had from Toronto. No, not from Toronto. She was the health.
Jillian Michaels.
Yes.
Yeah,
that's what I was thinking.
Jillian's actually she actually lives in Miami.
She lives here, okay.
Jillian, yeah, she was a coach on The Biggest Loser, that hit TV show.
That's
Jillian.
That's who I was saying. That's who I was thinking of.
But
Okay,
Michelle told me Michelle had a company has a company called Clearco.
Yeah.
And before that, she was actually a competitor of mine. She had a company called Bitopia when I had DealFind.
Okay.
Yeah, and I was chatting with her the other day on a video call. We did our episode on a video call, and she said to me like she doesn't watch, or she hasn't watched like Netflix or any TV, and she doesn't do like a lot of social media and stuff, like any kind of recreational, stuff like that, because she said that her life as an entrepreneur is so, I don't want to misquote her, but like something along the lines of so dramatic that it's like it's the best show ever, just seeing all the ups and downs of entrepreneurialism.
Yeah.
Entrepreneurialism. So yeah, I mean it's definitely something that has ups and downs. But I think somebody once said to me that the best way to succeed in business is stay in business. You know, for that long haul.
I love that.
Daniel, I really want to thank you for this. I'm really happy we got a chance to do this.
Me too.
This is fun. We're gonna go for lunch now.
This is fantastic. I can't wait for lunch. But hey, thank you so much for having me on the show. I love spending time with you, and I'm surprised I forgot the cameras were even rolling. I just felt like we were having a conversation.
You know, this big mic in our faces, I think, kind of keeps me reminded that
this whole thing?
Yeah. Yours is far away. I like to keep mine close just to make sure it gets everything.
Here we go. 1 2 1 2. I should have brought my guitar. We should have done a little number.
We could have done a jam. You know, people have told me that I have a great podcast voice. I don't know what that means. I don't know.
You have a great voice.
I think that they're trying to tell me I'm not so good looking. Because I think when somebody compliments you on the quality of your voice, they're like saying, stick with audio only.
Dude, you have a face for radio.
Thanks, buddy.
For sure.
Thanks, buddy.
I love you, my man.
I love you. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.